everybody, I'm Miss Amber, and today we are finishing our series, The Worst. Hopefully, you haven't experienced too many situations that have been the worst in your life as we have been covering all of this amazing information. Hopefully, your life hasn't looked anything like Joseph's, but if it has, hopefully, this message and God has really helped you to be able to see things the right way. So this week, just like every other time together, we are going to take a look at the life of Joseph. Each week, we have been looking at how Joseph has been making a choice to see things like the worst or to see things in the right way. So this week is just like every other week. So Joseph has found himself in a pit. He has found himself sold as a slave. He has found himself lied about, thrown in prison, forgotten about in prison, which is crazy. But he could have said every single one of those times that this was the worst, but he didn't. Joseph always chose to see things the right way. So today, in our last time together in this series, our big answer is this. Are you ready? Go ahead and sit up really straight and tall. Awesome. If you're taking notes, make sure to write this down. Our big answer for today is this. I can trust God with the big picture. I can trust God with the big picture. See, Joseph, time after time after time, he could have seen things as a big problem. It was a pretty big problem when he was thrown in that pit. It was a pretty big problem when he was sold away to Egypt. It was a pretty big problem when he was lied about and thrown in prison. But instead of focusing on the big problem, he trusted God with the big picture. Now, what does big picture mean? Is it like a photograph or a drawing? Like what does that mean? So each week we've been saying this. We've been saying that our story is part of God's story, and that even though things might not be going great right now, that this is just our current chapter. There's another chapter to come and a chapter after that and after that, that even though what we might be experiencing is the worst, that it's not going to stay like that. And so when we're talking about the big picture, we're talking about our entire story from chapter 1 all the way through our story to the last chapter. That's the big picture. So that helps us to see things. Even though we might have big problems, it helps us to focus on the right thing, which is our big picture. Awesome. So let's take a look at our memory verse for today before we start breaking this really big idea down for us, okay? So if you're taking notes, write this down. This is our memory verse. It's found in Philippians 1:6. It says this: He who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion. Completion means the end. So he who began a good work in you, who began a good work in us? God, exactly. God created us. It says in his word that we are his masterpiece, created in Christ Jesus to do the good works that he prepared in advance for us to do. So he who created, he who began a good work in us will carry it on to completion, to the end, which means this, that in this current chapter, if you're looking around and you're finding yourself with a big problem, you find yourself being really tempted to say that this is the worst, that God isn't done yet. That's just your current chapter. God is going to finish well. He has that good plan for you. You just might not have seen it to the very end just yet. So our focus has to be on our big picture, not on our big problem. So if you're sitting there and you're saying, Miss Amber, this is the very first time that I've heard all of this. I know this is the last time in our series, but I haven't watched any of the other. I haven't seen any of this. That's okay. There's really good news for you. So you can actually go on our YouTube channel found at 1132 Kids, and you can go back and you can look at each and every time that we were together learning all about the worst, and then you can get caught up. So that's amazing. So if you haven't done that already, go ahead and check it out. So for this week, let's take a look at a big problem. What was one of Joseph's big problems? He kind of had a lot of them, unfortunately, and sometimes it can feel like in our lives that we might have a lot of big problems. Maybe other people don't think that they're really big, but they're big to us. Maybe they make us really sad, or they really hurt our feelings, or they tempt us to feel a certain way about ourselves that's not what God says about us. That can be a big problem in our lives. So Joseph had some big problems. What are maybe some big problems that you're facing right now? We all go through hard times. We're all tempted to say that this is the worst. But God has such good plans for us. So I want you to think about maybe some things that might be big problems in your life right now. And let's apply what we learned today together to those big problems that we might be facing. So sometimes the problems feel like they're too big. Right? Like, I don't know how I'm even going to handle this. I don't know how I'm going to solve this problem. I don't know how I'm going to get through that problem. Think about Joseph. He's in this pit. He's looking up. He's like, I can't even climb out of this hole. Like, I don't know what I'm going to do. But in that moment, he trusted God with his big picture. He was sold as a slave. He didn't know where he was going to go. He didn't know if whoever he was going to be with would love him and treat him fairly, or who would be really mean to him. He didn't know, but he trusted God with his big picture. Then Joseph was lied about and thrown in jail, and he's like in prison. It's horrible. What is he going to do to get out? He can't escape. So what does he do? Does he focus on his big problem? He doesn't. He trusts God with his big picture. So we have to look at our big problems. We have to acknowledge them. It doesn't mean that they just go away. It doesn't mean they don't exist. It doesn't mean that we don't have to walk through these things in our lives, but we don't have to focus on the problem. We can focus on the plan that God has for us. So, before we start looking at big picture and how we can really focus on the big picture that God has for us, I want us to see how Joseph's story ends. Are you guys ready? It's like every single week, it's Mr. Gabe says that this isn't like that's it, right? And that's an epic story, and we don't see how it ends. And I've really been talking up our series verse week after week after week, so you guys are going to get to see how it all turns out. So everyone sit up really straight and tall. Awesome. And get ready for this epic story.
Hey everybody, I'm Mr. Gabe.
And I'm Mr. Andrew.
And this...
An epic story!
Today we are continuing the story of Joseph. Joseph was his dad's favorite, and his other 11 brothers were not big fans of his. God would speak to Joseph through his dreams, and his brothers were not thrilled about the 2 dreams Joseph had, where it seemed like he was the boss of them. So they decided to
kill him! But instead, they threw him in a pit, then sold him. He started doing better, but then he was lied about and thrown in jail. Jail was bad. Then jail wasn't as bad. But then he was forgotten about and had to stay in prison with all his prison mice.
Wow, it sounds pretty bad when you put it all together like that.
Joseph was probably furious and decided that he was always going to be in that prison. So he probably picked up a hobby like knitting. How do I make a scarf out of this thing?
Actually, no. See, 2 years later something happened. The Pharaoh began to have strange dreams that really bothered him.
I've had some strange dreams.
Andrew, we know, but this is about Pharaoh's dream.
Did he dream about brain noodles too?
Not exactly. Pharaoh dreamed that 7 fattened cows were down by the Nile River and started to graze. Then 7 skinny cows wandered over to the fat cows and swallowed them up.
What? That doesn't even make any sense. And I feel like we shouldn't care about the cow's weight. That's kind of rude.
Then Pharaoh woke up, he fell asleep again, and dreamed a second dream.
Like the cows weren't weird enough.
In the second dream, 7 bundles of large, healthy grain grew, but then 7 unhealthy, withered bundles of grain grew and swallowed the 7 healthy grains.
That's not even possible, Gabe. Last time I remember when I was in school, grain doesn't have mouth, or teeth, or even an esophagus, or a stomach, small intestines, or even large intestines, or...
Oh, we know. It was a dream. Pharaoh was really concerned by the dreams, and he called some of his attendants and advisors together the next day to talk about them. None of them knew what the dreams meant.
Shocker!
The cupbearer was there and suddenly remembered.
Oh yeah! He promised Joseph he would tell Pharaoh about him. Hurry up, cupbearer. Now's your chance to finally do the right thing.
He told Pharaoh that when he and the chief baker were in prison, they met a Hebrew named Joseph. They both had dreams that Joseph was able to interpret correctly. What Joseph said would happen actually happened.
Oh yeah! The baker took a dirt nap. Now, why do I want to eat scrambled eggs all of a sudden?
Pharaoh immediately sent for Joseph and had him brought from the prison. When Pharaoh had Joseph standing before him, he said, "I had 2 dreams and no one here can tell me what they mean. But I heard that when you hear a dream, you can interpret it."
I can't wait to hear what Joseph thinks about these super weird dreams. Do you have any cilantro?
Oh, man, no, I'm sorry. Wait, Andrew, you can eat later. We need to finish the story.
Oh, Gabriel Sebastian Mills, you cannot rush perfection.
Joseph answered humbly, "It's not me who has the power to do what you're asking, but God. He can tell you what your dreams mean." So Pharaoh told Joseph both of his dreams, the one with the skinny cows that eat the fat ones, and the withered grain that swallowed the healthy grain.
Gabe, remember, grain doesn't have a mouth, or teeth, or...
We know! They're dreams, Andrew.
Oh, one time, I had a weird dream.
Breathe in and let it out. Joseph answered, "Both of your dreams mean the same thing. First, you'll have 7 years of prosperity in Egypt and overabundance of blessing.
That is amazing news!
Followed by 7 years of famine.
This is amazing news! What does famine even mean? Is this even better than prosperity?
No, famine means no food."
Yikes.
Joseph continued, "The famine will be so bad that no one will even remember how good it had been for 7 years before the famine. But God has given you the knowledge before it does, so you can prepare." What are you doing?
When the world gets crazy, Gabriel, you prepare by stocking up with tons of the good stuff. Everyone knows that.
No, never mind. Joseph then began to give Pharaoh advice. He told him he should find a man wise enough to be put in charge of all of Egypt. Then his leaders can collect a portion of the food during the years of prosperity and set them aside so that when the famine hits, everyone will still have enough food during the famine.
See? Exactly! Stock up.
We need to talk about this later. Pharaoh was blown away by Joseph. He could tell the Lord was with him and could think of no better or wiser person than Joseph for the job. So he put Joseph in charge of all of Egypt, and the only person who ranked higher than him was the Pharaoh himself. See, God did have big plans for Joseph.
Bigger than a giant inflatable dinosaur?
What? Those 7 years of incredible crops produced so much grain, they eventually couldn't count it all, and stored all they could for the years of famine coming.
Gabe, are you okay?
Yeah, I'm good. When the famine finally hit, Egypt had plenty of food. They passed out food from what they saved to make sure no one starved. People began coming from all over Egypt to get food. He was so smart.
Like a scientist?
Yeah, kind of.
Or a doctor?
Sure.
Ooh, what about an inventor? I have always wanted to invent something to get rid of toe jam.
What?
Yeah, you know, the stuff that gets stuck in between your toes. Like, maybe a vacuum or something.
As you keep thinking about that idea, I'm gonna get back to the story. People came from all over Egypt and the surrounding areas to get portions of grain to take home, and one day some people showed up to get some food that took Joseph by surprise.
Was it a candygram?
No,
Clowns?
it was his brothers.
His brothers were clowns?
His actual brothers.
How dare they show their face around here? Did Joseph let him have it?
Not really. It had been so long since they threw him in that pit and sold him away to Egypt that his brothers didn't even recognize him.
Really?
There Joseph was, face to face with the people who hurt him and abandoned him, caused him so much pain and hardship. Joseph was so powerful that he could have gotten them back.
By putting them all in finger traps.
No.
Did he cover them in mashed potatoes, glitter, and Q-tips?
What? No.
Did he show everyone their embarrassing baby photos?
He didn't do any of that. Joseph gave them a test. Since they didn't know it was him, Joseph wanted to see if they had changed or if they were still the meanie heads that they used to be.
I hope you studied
What?
for the test. I hope you studied.
Joseph asked them some questions. He asked them where they were from, what they were doing there, and if they had any other brothers.
Oh, I bet they're in trouble now. I bet they lied.
Actually, they told him the truth.
What?
They told Joseph that they had a brother a long time ago that they treated poorly and who they missed. They were sorry for all that they had done.
Just sorry? Sorry? Sorry for the pit and the slavery and the jail?
Yes, they had changed. Joseph was filled with compassion and couldn't keep it a secret who he really was anymore. His brothers were so happy to see Joseph until they realized what Joseph could do to them since he had so much power, and then they became afraid. They thought Joseph might even try and get even with them.
Yeah, time for the tour of the pits or the nice royal prison.
But Joseph didn't. He forgave them.
That's crazy.
Not only that, but he brought his family to Egypt, even his dad, who was very old by now.
Family reunion! Oh, Joseph, my boy, it's so good to see you again. I'm so sorry. I thought you were dead this whole time.
Andrew, what are you doing?
Oh, I'm sorry. I just got so caught up in the beautiful moment.
God really did have big plans for Joseph.
Bigger than a giant dinosaur?
Yes!
Oh. Bigger than a goldfish?
Yeah, but not bigger than this salmon. God was with Joseph and used his situation to help others. Genesis 50:20 tells us that God's plan was so big that he used Joseph to save the lives of so many people. Joseph told his brothers, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, for the saving of many lives."
And that's an epic story.
I love epic stories, but Mr. Andrew looked a little different this time. I'm gonna have to check on that. I love that we got to see the end of Joseph's story, so it is incredible. Can you imagine? Can you imagine that you were Joseph and like you've gone through all of these hard things, thing after thing after thing, big problem after big problem after big problem, and then God finally elevates you. You get to see kind of like the chapter that arrives, that is the big picture chapter. You're like, oh, I wouldn't have been able to provide for all of these people. I wouldn't have been able to save all of these people if I hadn't been in jail, which is crazy. But can you imagine? You are like so powerful. You're in this amazing position. You're helping all of these people. And then The people who hurt you, who wanted to throw you in a pit, who wanted to kill you, right? Serious. Who sold you away, who just wanted to get rid of you, come to you now and say, hi, we really need some food. Like, we're going to die if you don't help us. Can you imagine? If I were Joseph, I would have been a little tempted to be like, it's me. Do you not remember me? Do you not remember the pit that you threw me? And like start listing all of the things. But he didn't. See, Joseph could have focused on all the problems that they caused him. His brothers, all the things that his brothers did to him, the hardships that he had to go through, the difficulties that he had to go through. But instead, he had this really tough choice to make. He had to trust God with his big picture, even in that moment, even when he was elevated, even when his life looked really good, it still hurt his heart. Can you imagine? Like, his surroundings and his environment has completely changed. He's doing really good. He has all this power. He has this position. He's helping all these people. But can you imagine how his heart felt when he saw his brothers? That's a big problem. He had to battle with, like, do I forgive them? Do I not? Am I really sad? Am I mad? Am I angry? Like, what emotions was Joseph feeling in that moment? I can't even imagine. But Joseph had to choose to trust God with his big picture, just like our big answer says. So the big picture, God always sees the big picture. He knows the end of our stories. He knows none of this craziness that we might go through catches him off guard or by surprise. It's not like God doesn't see it coming when we have a big problem. God knows, and he has good plans for us, just like our memory verse says. Let's go over that together again. So our memory verse is found in Philippians 1:6. It says, he who began a good work in you will carry it out or carry it on to completion. He who began a good work, we know that's God. When God starts something in our lives, when he starts to write our story, he's going to make sure that it finishes. He's going to make sure that that good plan happens for us. We have to trust him with it. Joseph had to choose on what to focus on. Joseph had that little test for his brothers. He asked them about, do you have any other brothers? What happened? And they were honest. They were sorry. They told him, even though they didn't recognize him, they told them all about their brother that they made a horrible mistake about and that they missed him and they were so sad. And in that moment, Joseph had to choose forgiveness. Joseph could have been like, sorry, guys, you made a bad choice. Get out of here. But he didn't. He chose forgiveness, which brings us to my favorite part. It brings us to our series verse. You guys are going to be like, finally, okay? So everyone sit up really straight and tall. Awesome. If you haven't written it down yet, make sure that you do so. Our series verse is found in Genesis 50:20. You guys can even say it with me if you want, if you know it by now. God's word says this, you intended to harm me, right? But God intended it for good, for the saving of many lives. Joseph is standing there in front of his brothers, the end of the story. They're asking for forgiveness and they recognize, oh my goodness, that is Joseph. He says, I am that brother. And it's like, dun, 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 like one of those movies, like a really intense part, like, oh, gasp, okay? So they realize, it's Joseph, and they get really excited, but then they get really scared. They're like, oh, we did some bad things. Please don't hurt us. And Joseph tells them this. He says, brothers, you intended to harm me. You made bad choices. You wanted to get rid of me, but God had such a great big picture for me, but God intended it for good, for what is now being done, the saving of many lives. And it's not just some random people's lives. It's not just those other people's lives. It's actually the lives of his brothers who gave him all of his big problems. Oh, crazy. That is just how good God is. God loves us so much that even when we mess up, we like to cheer on Joseph. Yeah, Joseph was the good guy. Joseph was the hero in the story, and he is. But God loved his brothers just as much. which is crazy to me. But that's how good God is. Even though they intended to harm Joseph, all of the things that Joseph went through was actually not just for Joseph's good, but for their good as well. It's just incredible, okay? You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, for the saving of many lives. Now, God doesn't cause everything. Do we have big problems in our lives? Yes. Does that mean that God said, let me give them a big problem? No. But God does promise to use everything. He'll take our obstacles that we go through. He'll take our hardships that we go through. He'll take our big problems that we go through, and he will use it to serve us. He will use it for our good. Each week that we've been together, each time that we've been in the series, The Worst, has built up to this point, okay? So here are the things that can keep us focused on the big picture. We've already covered them. So this is going to be kind of a review for you. So go ahead and make sure that you write these down in your notebook, right? Take notes, but this is what helps us be focused on our big picture and trust God with our big picture. Number one, we need to make sure that we do not have any bitterness. Do you guys remember first week? We can choose to be bitter or better. We have to get rid of bitterness. We have to get rid of unforgiveness. And that's what Joseph did. He said, I am not going to hold on to unforgiveness. I'm going to forgive you. And he was able to focus on the big picture, all that God wanted to do. And number two, opposition. We need to see opposition or resistance the right way as an opportunity. That helps us to be big picture focused, because when bad things happen, when we have resistance in our lives, we can say, you know what? That's okay. This is part of the big picture and the big plan God has for us. And number three, breakdown. We cannot allow breakdown to happen. We have to push through, and we have to really look for and declare breakthrough, not breakdown, breakthrough in our lives. We just can't give up. Like our memory verse that week said, do not get tired in doing good, for at the right time you will reap a harvest of blessing if you just don't give up. That helps us to be big picture focused. And then last time that we were together, what helps us to be big picture focused is actually not focusing on our problems. Does it mean that they're not there? Does it mean that they don't exist? No. But if we focus on helping others and maybe helping others with their problems, it actually helps us through ours. It keeps us focused on the big picture. So let's take a look at our memory verse one more time. Philippians 1:6 says this, he who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion. God knows our big picture. So this is your challenge for this week. So if you find yourself, just like every other time that we were together, saying that this is the worst, whatever big problem you're facing, whatever thing pops up in your life and you're like, oh, not again, you can, instead of focusing on that problem, that big problem, you can say, you know what? This is just a part of my big picture. This is just a tiny part of my story that God is writing. God knows the big picture, but we just have to trust him with it. So don't give up. God is not done. Whatever situation you are in is just temporary. It's going to get better. You're going to move on to your next chapter. It's okay if it feels like something is the worst right now. It doesn't mean that it's going to stay that way if we trust God with the big picture. I've loved this series so much. I always love getting to hang out with you guys and share what God is teaching me in my life, because a lot of times God's teaching me and then I just teach you. So I don't have it all figured out either. So we are all learning together. So I love getting to share with you guys each and every time that we are together. It's always a joy. I love it so much. And as always, I'll see you guys next time.